Her fingers bled from 12-hour shifts scrubbing classrooms her son wasn't allowed to sit in. But when Malik walked into that elite prep school music room and played like no one they'd ever heard, the teachers froze. One whispered, "He's not even enrolled here." 30 seconds later, the headmaster made a call that would decide if Malik's gift would ever be heard again. But what if someone was already recording? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. In the quiet echoing halls of Wyndham Preparatory Academy, a school as old as some of the fortunes funding it, every step was legacy. The floors polished daily, until they gleamed like still water, had carried generations of names etched in brass plaques and admission rosters. It was the kind of school where last names opened doors faster than first impressions, and tradition wasn't just honored, it was weaponized. Malik Avery, 14, wasn't supposed to be there. At least not in the way that mattered. His mother, Nina Avery, had cleaned those halls for nearly 12 years long before Malik could even spell Wyndham. She came in early, left late, scrubbed the bathrooms the senator's sons refused to flush, and never once complained. She was dependable, invisible, and black, and that combination made her a perfect employee but an unspoken outsider. When Wyndham offered employee children a rare chance to attend for free, just one student every few years, Nina applied. Not because she thought her son would be chosen, but because he deserved to be somewhere that didn't punish him for being smart. They picked Malik. Or maybe they picked Nina's loyalty. Either way, he was. But from day one, his presence unsettled things. He didn't have the right clothes. No tailored blazers or winter coats that zipped all the way up. His shoes squeaked when he walked, and not from polish but from age. His hair wasn't lined up with precision, and worst of all, he didn't know how to shrink himself the way other scholarship kids had learned to do. Malik didn't bow his head or fake a smile. He was observant, quiet, but never small. And for Wyndham that made him a problem, especially when he started spending time in the music room. It was supposed to be off-limits unless supervised, especially for underclassmen. But on Tuesdays when Nina mopped the West Wing early, and the halls were empty, Malik would slip into the echoey sanctuary lined with cellos, violins and one baby grand piano positioned like a crown jewel in the center of the room. He didn't know what the rules were, or maybe he did, and just stopped caring. The first time he touched the keys, it was by accident. Dusting one with the edge of his sleeve, it echoed, one note, hanging, then another, then a third, and before he knew it, the room wasn't silent anymore. He had no training, no sheet music, but what Malik had was memory. A kind of sonic recall most people didn't notice. He'd hear things once, then feel them again later, in his hands like ghosts whispering instructions. Back home he used to tap rhythms on the kitchen table while his mom hummed gospel between cleaning shifts. Music lived in him, not around him. After a few weeks of sneaking in, Malik could mimic the school's concert pieces note for note. Pieces he'd only overheard in passing during recitals or rehearsals. His fingers stumbled sometimes, but they always found their way back. One afternoon Mr. Langston, the music teacher, walked in early and caught him mid-piece. At first, Langston didn't say a word, just stared. Malik froze, fingers hovering like a thief caught mid-theft. "I didn't touch anything," Malik mumbled, rising too fast from the bench. Langston studied him. Then the piano. "That was Chopin," he said slowly. "You reading that by ear?" Malik nodded. Langston paused. "You know what Chopin is?" Malik shrugged. "I know it sounds like the rain when it starts real slow." That was the first time Langston smiled. Not kindly, just surprised. Word spread fast after that. By the end of the week, Malik was being watched. Not supported. Not celebrated. Watched. Upperclassmen began making comments in locker rooms. "He plays like he's trying to prove something. He probably records it and copies. Can't be real." Some said nothing, just tightened their grip on their instruments when Malik walked by. But silence could slice too. One afternoon he sat on the piano bench while a senior named Pierce Chandler stood behind him with folded arms. Pierce was everything Malik wasn't. Blonde, polished, son of a senator and third-generation Wyndham legacy. He was also the school's piano prodigy, and deeply uncomfortable now that his title felt at risk. "I don't know what you think this is," Pierce said quietly, "but this isn't a place for auditions." Malik didn't respond. "You're not supposed to be here. You don't just walk into talent." Still, Malik said nothing. Later that week, someone loosened the piano bench screws. It collapsed the next time he sat on it. He hit the floor hard, tailbone sore for days. No one laughed. But no one helped either. Malik got up alone. He never told his mom. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew she would march into that school and raise hell. And she couldn't afford to lose the job that put food on their table, and her son in that school. So he stayed quiet, and he kept playing, each time more carefully, more beautifully. One day, while playing alone again, he heard the door creak behind him. He stopped, ready to leave. But this time, it wasn't a teacher or student. It was the headmaster's assistant, Miss Calder. She didn't speak, just listened. Then she left. Hours later, Nina was called to the office. "Your son was in a restricted room," the headmaster said, tapping a desk with manicured impatience. "He wasn't hurting anyone," Nina answered, folding her cleaning gloves slowly. "There are policies," he replied. "For safety, for liability." And then he smiled. Perhaps Wyndham is too rigorous for some placements. That night, Malik noticed his access card no longer opened the West Wing doors. He said nothing. But the next Tuesday, when Nina went to clean, she left the door cracked behind her. No words. Just an opening. Malik slipped through. The piano was waiting. He sat down. This time he didn't warm up. Didn't test the keys. He just started to play. And when he did, the room changed. The sound, raw, rushing, perfect, hit the walls like a storm rolling in. It was unlike anything even Malik had expected. Like the instrument wasn't responding to him. It was channeling through him. And in that moment, standing just outside the open door, someone began recording. They didn't know the boy's name. But by the time he hit the final note, they knew they were watching something no one could explain. But when he touched the piano keys, something happened no one could explain. The next morning, Wyndham Academy's East Wing was unusually quiet. Not silent in the respectful, studious kind of way, but hushed with tension, like a room full of people pretending not to look while desperately listening. Students moved in packs, whispering behind half-lowered screens, eyes flickering toward Malik every time he walked past. He'd felt this gaze before. It wasn't admiration. It was calculation. He walked down the marble hallway in his scuffed sneakers, the only student not wearing dress shoes. His backpack stitched with a faded thread and one broken zipper, hung crooked over one shoulder. No monogram, no designer tag. Just like everything else about him, it didn't match. But the whispers weren't about his shoes this time. Something had changed. The night before, someone had uploaded a 30-second video clip to a student-only group chat. No title, no tags, just a boy at the piano, in shadow, playing something so soul-deep and furious it sounded like heartbreak bottled in keys. There were no faces in the frame, but everyone knew who it was. Malik Avery, the janitor's son. He hadn't seen the video yet. His mom's prepaid phone didn't support streaming, and he'd used up the school computer lab time finishing a science report. But he felt it, in every glance, every held breath as he passed. Mr. Langston barely acknowledged him in class that morning, just muttered attendance and moved on. Malik tried not to take it personally, until he saw Langston close his laptop sharply when Malik walked by. Things started to tilt sideways after lunch. A girl from his homeroom, a flutist named Ava Winston, cornered him by the lockers. She didn't usually speak to him, unless they were assigned the same project. "You didn't post it?" she asked. "Post what?" "The video. From yesterday. You didn't share it?" He blinked. "I don't even know what you're talking about." Ava studied him. "Someone filmed you in the music room. It's everywhere." He blinked slowly, processing. "And..." She hesitated. "People think you're showing off." He exhaled sharply. "I was just playing. I didn't even know anyone was watching." Ava nodded but didn't defend him. She just walked away. By 3:09 p.m., things shifted from whispers to action. The school's intranet suddenly went down for maintenance. A memo was slipped under the music room door, stating that unscheduled use of school instruments by unauthorized students is strictly prohibited. The words weren't addressed to Malik directly, but they were. By the time he found the video, it had already been flagged and taken down twice. Someone had saved it before deletion and re-uploaded it on a private Instagram account. It had over 800 views and 300 comments. Most were short. "Who even is this? This from the scholarship kid? He's not even supposed to be in that room, lol." Real or pre-recorded. Only one comment stuck with him. "There's something about this. Hurts in a good way." That one was anonymous. That night, Malik stayed later than usual to help his mom with her last round of cleaning. He emptied trash cans while she wiped down the staff lounge. "You okay, baby?" she asked, catching his far-off look. "I'm fine. You sure?" He nodded, forcing a tight smile. She paused. "You don't have to act like the world's not pushing back. I know what that feels like." He didn't say anything for a while. Then, "Do you ever feel like you're too much and not enough at the same time?" Nina stopped wiping. Turned to him. "Every day." The next morning, Malik was summoned to the headmaster's office. He wasn't told why. He sat in the stiff leather chair across from Headmaster Dyer, whose suit looked like it cost more than Nina's monthly salary. Dyer folded his hands. "Malik, do you know why you're here?" Malik shook his head. "There's a video circulating that features you in the music room after hours." "Was that you?" Malik looked at the man squarely. "Yes." "Were you authorized to be in that room?" "My mom had keys. I wasn't breaking anything. Just playing." Dyer leaned back. "That piano is a historic donation. A 1924 Steinway, reserved for supervised use only." Malik held his breath. Dyer continued. "It's not about talent, Malik. It's about respecting boundaries. You crossed one." Malik's voice came out colder than he expected. "Because I played something that made people listen?" Dyer smiled politely. "Because you weren't given permission to be heard." That sentence echoed longer than it should have. Malik stood. "Can I go now?" The headmaster hesitated. "You may, but I suggest you consider how easily good impressions can be undone." Back in the hallway, the whispers had quieted. Now there was distance, not just curiosity anymore, suspicion. He passed Pierce Chandler, the senior pianist, who didn't even pretend to hide his disdain. "Next time you want to go viral," Pierce muttered, "try asking first." Malik paused. Pierce stared at him. "I've worked for years. Lessons, recitals, competitions. And you sneak into a practice room, and suddenly you're some musical savior." Malik stared him down. "Didn't know music came with a bloodline." Pierce's smirk didn't reach his eyes. "Around here, everything does." Later that day, Mr. Langston cornered Malik near the music lockers. "You've got talent," Langston said. "But what you're doing, it's putting people in a difficult position." "I didn't do anything," Malik said flatly. Langston sighed. "That's the problem. You didn't, but they think you did." Malik narrowed his eyes. "Why are you scared of me playing piano?" Langston didn't answer. He just looked away. That night, Nina found her supply closet reassigned. Her nameplate gone. No explanation. No apology. Just a quiet shuffling. She didn't say a word about it to Malik. But Malik noticed the way she stared at the floor the whole ride home. The next morning, something different happened. On the school announcement board, a rolling digital display in the main lobby, a new message appeared. "Unauthorized content involving Wyndham property is being investigated. Students found sharing or viewing this content may face disciplinary consequences." They never said Malik's name. They didn't have to. But the message was clear. Silence it. Erase it. Forget it. What they hadn't expected was who posted it again. By mid-morning, a teacher not from the music department but from history shared the video on her private social media. She captioned it, "This is why we fight for equity. A moment of beauty they want buried." The post was shared over 2,000 times in 4 hours. Local artists began commenting. So did activists. By evening, Wyndham's Board of Trustees had received 3 formal complaints. And someone anonymous again emailed the local Arts Weekly with the subject line, "Prodigy or Problem." The email contained one link: the video. Wyndham was no longer in control of the narrative, but someone still wanted the story buried. That night, the video disappeared again. This time, from all platforms, not flagged, not reported, deleted entirely. Every version, every copy, gone. Even the backup Malik saved to a school flash drive wouldn't open. It had been wiped. But the next morning, a new video surfaced, a clearer one, from a different angle. Recorded by someone standing inside the room, watching Malik closely, too closely. But the next morning, a video of him playing surfaced, and someone wanted it deleted. By Monday morning, Malik's world had changed, but not in the way he'd hoped. He wasn't walking through the halls as the boy who could play Chopin by ear anymore. He was walking through as the boy who wasn't supposed to. The whispers had grown sharper, more organized. Parents who barely noticed him before were now whispering behind manicured hands during pickup. The air in Wyndham Academy, once charged with polite superiority, now hummed with the invisible weight of judgment. No one said it outright, of course. Wyndham prided itself on its progressive inclusivity. They had a diversity statement printed on every brochure, framed in every office. It said all the right things. But Malik had learned something. Statements like that were often armor for people who never wanted to admit how they really saw you. The music department became the epicenter of it all. Mr. Langston's tone had changed overnight. He no longer smiled when Malik entered the room. No more good mornings. No more questions about technique. Instead, Langston grew cautious, clinical. Every interaction felt like a quiet warning. Be careful. Don't draw attention. Even the way he spoke to Malik was different now. Flattened, professional, stripped of any warmth. And Malik understood why. Because in Wyndham's unspoken hierarchy, Mr. Langston's position depended on keeping certain families happy. And Malik's presence, his raw, undeniable talent, had begun to make them uncomfortable. At lunchtime, Malik sat at a corner table in the cafeteria, alone. He used to eat with the two other scholarship kids, but lately, even they had been avoiding him. It wasn't personal, it was survival. When you were the exception allowed in, you learned quickly not to draw fire toward yourself. At the next table, a group of boys from the advanced music program were laughing too loudly. Pierce Chandler, the senator's son, sat in the middle, the natural leader of their orbit. Maybe he's some kind of scam, Pierce said casually, fork tapping against his plate. There's no way he plays like that without training. My dad says talent like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from YouTube. Another joked. Laughter erupted. Malik kept his eyes on his tray, but one of them, Miles, a quiet kid from the percussion section, glanced Malik's way. For a second he looked like he wanted to speak up. But then he didn't. That's how it worked here. People didn't have to say something cruel to be complicit. They just had to say nothing at all. After lunch, Malik went to the practice room. It was supposed to be open practice time, but when he swiped his access card, the door flashed denied. He tried again. Same result. Hey, a voice called behind him. It was Miss Calder, the headmaster's assistant. That room's off limits to unsupervised students now. Malik frowned. Since when? Since Friday, she said, avoiding his eyes. New safety policy. But I'm in the music program, he said quietly. She hesitated. You're enrolled in the music class, yes. But that's not the same. Not the same. Those three words hit harder than she knew. She left before he could reply. Malik stood there, fingers curling around the strap of his backpack, staring at the door like it was a living thing. He could almost hear the piano on the other side. Mute. Forbidden. Waiting. He walked away. But he didn't go home. Instead, he circled the long way around the building, toward the back hallway where janitors and maintenance staff entered after hours. He knew the routes. He'd watched his mother take them for years. That night, when Nina returned to the East Wing to finish her last cleaning shift, Malik slipped in behind her. Baby, you shouldn't be here, she whispered, looking over her shoulder. I just need 10 minutes. She sighed but didn't stop him. She'd seen that look before, the one that said he wasn't asking for permission anymore. When Malik reached the piano, his hands hovered over the keys. For a moment he hesitated. Then he played. Not Chopin. Not Bach. Something his own. It started low, like a storm forming in a heartbeat. Notes that rose and fell like arguments, crescendos that cracked open the silence. It was everything he'd been holding inside. Anger, exhaustion, pride, confusion. It wasn't classical, or jazz, or gospel. It was Malik. Nina leaned against the doorway, tears she didn't expect burning her eyes. She'd cleaned that room for years, and never once seen someone fill it. What she didn't notice was the figure standing down the hall. Mr. Langston. He'd stayed late that night, pretending to finish grading. But the truth was, he couldn't shake the feeling that Malik's music, that boy's music, was something different, something dangerous. When he saw Malik at the piano again, something twisted in him. Pride and fear at war. Because he recognized genius, but also what it cost. The next morning, Langston was called into the headmaster's office. Did you know about this? Dyer asked, sliding a printed still frame across the desk. It was from the new video, clearer than before. Malik's hands on the piano, face illuminated. Langston's stomach sank. Yes, he admitted quietly. Dyer tapped the paper. We've received several parent complaints. They're concerned about disruptions to the program's integrity. Langston swallowed. He didn't break anything. He's gifted. That's not the issue, Dyer said smoothly. It's perception. They're saying this gives an unfair advantage to certain students, especially since his mother works here. Langston's eyes flickered up. You're punishing him for being talented. Dyer smiled faintly. No, Mr. Langston. I'm protecting our institution from unnecessary attention. That afternoon, Malik noticed Langston avoiding eye contact again. But now the teacher looked haunted. Later that day, after classes ended, Malik saw Langston outside in the parking lot, speaking to a woman in a tailored suit. She handed him an envelope, thin, discreet. He didn't take it right away. When she left, Langston looked around nervously before sliding the envelope into his briefcase. Something about that moment unsettled Malik. That night, Nina came home late, her eyes red. They moved my shift again, she said quietly. Said they're restructuring the custodial staff. But they cut my hours. Malik stared at her. Because of me? No, she lied too quickly. Don't start thinking that. He didn't argue. He just nodded. But when she went to bed, Malik sat awake staring at his hands. The same hands that made sound feel like truth. Now a threat. At Wyndham, brilliance wasn't celebrated when it came from the wrong skin, the wrong family, the wrong door. He didn't want to believe it, but the way people looked at him now, it wasn't admiration. It was warning. The next morning, Langston didn't show up to class. The substitute said he'd taken a personal leave. Students murmured, confused. Pierce smirked. Malik sat in the back, feeling a knot form in his chest. Something was happening behind the scenes. That afternoon, when he walked past the headmaster's office, the door was cracked just enough for him to hear. Dyer's voice was low. Careful. Yes, I understand. We'll handle it quietly. No need for outside press. Just make sure the boy doesn't access the facility again. A pause. Then, yes. His name is Malik Avery. The phone clicked down. Malik stepped back slowly, heart pounding. He didn't know who was on the other end of that call. But whoever it was, whatever that conversation meant, he knew one thing. It wasn't about protecting Wyndham. It was about erasing him. And then, the principal made a quiet call that would change Malik's future. The change didn't come with an announcement. It came with a locked door. The recital room, an elegant echo-prone space lined with velvet chairs and soundproofed walls, had always been open during practice periods for students in the advanced music program. The rule wasn't written anywhere, but everyone knew who could enter and who couldn't. Malik had never had trouble before. His access card, though limited, worked just enough to let him in when a door was left open, or when his mother cleaned nearby. But after that call from Headmaster Dyer, after his name had been spoken like a threat, everything shifted. That Monday afternoon, Malik walked briskly toward the recital room, after classes, his sheet music tucked under his arm. Not that he needed it. He remembered everything by sound, but carrying music gave him something to hold. A kind of armor. He swiped his card. Red light. He tried again. Still red. The little reader beeped, and the door stayed shut. He stepped back, heart thudding. A security camera above the door blinked slowly. Watch. A minute later, Pierce walked up behind him, whistling lightly. Oh, Pierce said, all mock concern. Did they finally update the roster? Malik didn't answer. Pierce shrugged. Don't take it personally. It's just policy. You've got to be officially invited to use the recital room. You know, selected. Malik stared at him. I was selected when I got in. Right, Pierce said with a smirk. But that was for the janitorial access, wasn't it? That one cut. Pierce pushed the door with his own card green light. He slipped inside with a flourish, the door clicking shut behind him. Malik stood alone in the hallway, fists curled tight. Later that evening, Nina tried to hide the fact that her own work badge had been downgraded. She could still clean, still clock in, but certain areas, East Hallway, teacher lounges, recital storage were now off limits. They said it's just a security measure, she said, avoiding Malik's eyes. Too many people coming and going. Protocol. Malik didn't believe it. He saw the way she cleaned more quietly now, shoulders hunched slightly, trying not to be seen. He knew the feeling. Over the next few days, Malik found other ways to practice. He borrowed a broken keyboard from the drama department. Half the keys didn't work, but the ones that did gave him enough to run scales, build muscle memory, and piece together his own compositions. Mr. Langston hadn't returned. No explanation, No updates. His substitute barely acknowledged Malik in class. She handed out handouts, watched the clock. Malik asked her once if the school would allow a junior recital audition. She blinked. "There's no record of you in the performance roster," she said flatly. "But I'm enrolled." She tilted her head. "In theory, but you're not registered for juried performance. That requires faculty recommendation. Private coaching. You haven't completed the hours." Malik felt the heat in his chest rise. "I completed them with Mr. Langston." "I don't have documentation," she replied, already turning to help another student. That evening, Malik dug through his backpack for the email trail from Langston. He'd printed a few of their conversations, mostly about music selections and progress notes. But the files were gone. His email account? Wiped. His inbox reset to a default template. No messages. No history. He tried to log into the school server. Access denied. The school hadn't just shut him out physically. They were erasing his paper trail. When he told his mom, Nina sat down at the edge of their couch in silence. "They're playing you," she said quietly. "Same playbook, different decade." Malik's jaw tensed. "Why?" "Because you made them look, and they don't like what they saw." He said nothing for a long while. "Then I didn't ask to go viral. I just played." "I know," she said. "But baby, you played like you belonged." 2 days later, he passed a bulletin board near the music wing. Taped in the center was a glossy flyer for the school's Winter Honors Recital, an annual tradition that showcased the best and brightest. Malik scanned the list of performers. Pierce Chandler, headliner. Eva Winston, flute solo. Miles Harrington, percussion ensemble.
No, Malik Avery.
He found Miss Calder after class. "Excuse me," he said. "I wanted to ask about the recital program." She turned, overly polite. "What about it?" "My name's not on it." She gave him a rehearsed smile. "The faculty selects based on year-round participation and audition scores. Only enrolled performers are eligible. I auditioned. No record of that, I'm afraid. I played for Mr. Langston. He was— Mr. Langston is on leave," she said, interrupting gently. "If you'd like, we can consider you for next term. Just follow the correct protocol." He knew what that meant. Be quiet. Start over. Shrink. That evening, as Malik sat in the back stairwell, his usual quiet place now, he heard voices above. 2 students from the recital group were talking. "Did you hear Langston's contract might not be renewed? Over a student? That's ridiculous. They said he played favorites. Broke some access rules. I mean, that kid's good. But still." The voices faded. Malik sat in silence. Later that night, while helping his mom clean one of the administrative offices, he noticed a laptop left open on a desk. The screen displayed a file folder. Recital archive. Surveillance review. Before he could look away, he saw his name, not typed, labeled on a video clip. Malik Avery. Unauthorized entry. He didn't touch anything. Didn't click. But he saw enough. They had been watching him. Recording him. Not just from the hallway cameras. From inside the recital room. Someone had been filming his sessions. But not for celebration, for containment. The next day, Malik cornered the tech assistant during his study hall. "Hey," he said, trying to stay casual. "You work with the AV system, right?" The guy looked up from his keyboard. "Why?" "Just wondering. Do the music rooms have security cameras?" The guy hesitated. "Supposedly, no. But the recital hall does. Quiet install last semester. Staff only access." "Who has access?" He shrugged. "Admin. Maybe Langston. I don't know." "Why?" "No reason," Malik said, backing away. But inside, his mind was racing. They didn't just shut him out. They studied him. Tracked him. And if they had recordings, someone had footage they didn't want him to see. That night, as the halls emptied and janitors quietly swept the corridors, a flash drive was slid under the back door of the music room. It was wrapped in an envelope. No note. No return name. Just one word scribbled across the top in rushed handwriting. "Watch." But someone had been secretly recording his stolen practice sessions. Malik didn't sleep the night he found the flash drive. He didn't open it at home. Something in his gut told him not to plug that kind of truth into a device in a house where the walls were thin, and suspicion had already started seeping in. So he waited until the next day, when the library's computer lab opened at 7:30 a.m. It was a quiet corner of the school, the only place where names didn't echo and the silence didn't feel loaded. Malik sat at the farthest computer, near the window, slipped the flash drive into the USB slot, and clicked open the folder marked Watch. There were 5 video files, all dated from the past month, all labeled with his name. The first was grainy footage of him in the recital room, alone, sitting at the piano. He hit the keys cautiously at first, then with more confidence. The timestamp matched a Tuesday evening 2 weeks earlier, one of the nights he'd slipped in behind his mother while she cleaned. The camera angle wasn't from the hallway. It was inside the room, hidden. Someone had installed surveillance directly above the piano. But it wasn't just that. The footage wasn't cold or procedural. It was edited, trimmed, curated. Each file was only about 30 seconds long. Each one showed Malik mid-performance, emotion flooding every note. They weren't security tapes. They were clips, highlights. Whoever had recorded these hadn't just wanted to monitor him. They'd admired him, or feared him, or both. He clicked on the final file. This one was different. It didn't start with music. It started with voices, familiar ones. The camera must have kept recording even after Malik left the room. The timestamp was 10 minutes later. Headmaster Dyer's voice came through first. Sharp, polished, practiced. He's becoming a liability. A second voice followed, softer, more careful. His mother's been here a long time. Firing her would raise flags. Then find another way. Cut access. Shift her schedule. We don't need a story. We need quiet. And the boy, Dyer sighed. Talented, but misplaced. Let's not reward insubordination with recognition.
Then a silence.
Then one final line. He's already become the kind of problem we can't control without making noise. Malik stared at the screen, heart pounding. It wasn't about him playing piano. It was about what his playing represented. A breach of control. A rewriting of the rules. And Wyndham didn't do rewrites. That same afternoon, the Winter Honors Recital was officially announced to the student body. Posters lined the music wing. Digital invites buzzed to parents' inboxes. The headline performance? Pierce Chandler. Senior Composition and Solo Showcase. Malik stood in front of one of the posters as students buzzed past him. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, but something shifted in his eyes. A quiet decision. He walked straight to the music director's office and knocked once. The new substitute opened the door, blinking in surprise. "I want to audition," Malik said plainly. She hesitated. "The roster's full. There's still time. The recital's not for 2 weeks. Your name's not on the judge list. You're not even registered as a formal performer." Malik handed her a sheet of paper. "What's this?" "My recommendation," he said. It was a printed email. Not from Mr. Langston, but from the director of the Mid-Atlantic Youth Symphony, who had seen Malik's viral clip before it was deleted, and had personally written Malik offering a mentorship. "I think he's exceptional," the note read. "Raw, yes. But there's genius in him. You'd be fools not to foster it." The substitute read it twice, eyes flickering. "I'll talk to the board," she said. But no promises. The next day, Malik received a printed slip in his locker. "Recital audition scheduled Friday for the and..." It wasn't the main recital hall. It wasn't even on the performance floor, but it was a crack in the door. And that was enough. When Friday came, Malik arrived early. He didn't wear anything fancy, just a pressed shirt, slacks and those same worn-out sneakers that never quite matched the polished floors. He sat outside room 204 with his hands folded in his lap. Inside he could hear snippets of conversation. Eva, Miles, Pierce, all waiting, all watching. Pierce passed him without speaking. But Eva stopped, looked at him. "They said you got a slot," she said. "Yeah." "You're not nervous?" Malik shook his head. "No." She nodded, almost respectfully. When his name was finally called, the room went still. 3 judges sat behind a folding table, not the full panel, just faculty volunteers. One of them glanced up at him, then down at the sheet. "Malik Avery?"
Yes.
"All right. You have 5 minutes." He sat at the upright piano, a far cry from the Steinway in the main recital room. The keys were uneven, a little sticky. But Malik didn't need perfect. He just needed sound. He started to play. The room faded. Notes rose, slow at first, then faster. He weaved in fragments of classical structure, gospel rhythm, jazz improvisation. He didn't play to impress. He played to speak. By the time he finished, the room was silent. The middle judge cleared her throat. "Thank you, Malik. We'll be in touch." He nodded, stood and left. No applause, no emotion, just silence. That weekend, the recital roster was finalized and posted. Malik checked it early Monday morning. He wasn't on it. No surprise. But he wasn't disappointed either. He'd expected it. Wyndham had never been built for his name to appear in bold. But then, something strange happened. That same morning, Ava found him in the library. You didn't hear. Hear what? There was a mix-up. The judges uploaded the final list to the recital sponsor. They included your name by accident. Sent it to the donors. Malik blinked. Okay? They froze. Like froze. One of the donors, her name's Ms. Lynette Hall. She's on the board of the Youth Conservatory in D.C. She saw your video months ago. Said she'd recognize your hands anywhere. Malik stared. She asked why your name wasn't at the top of the program. And what did they say? They didn't know what to say. But now your name's locked in. They can't take it off without drawing fire. Malik didn't smile. But something in his chest cracked open. Not joy. Not even pride. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing the door had been cracked again. But this time, it wasn't through pity. It was through undeniable proof. He was in. Not because Wyndham allowed it, but because someone outside its walls had seen the truth. Until the judges accidentally heard Malik's name and froze. The day after Malik's name appeared on the recital roster, Wyndham Academy's hallways didn't hum, they hissed. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was resentment disguised as curiosity. Students whispered as he passed. Teachers looked away. Parents' emails began pouring into the administration office, full of questions that sounded polite but carried sharp edges. How was this student selected without recommendation? Is this the same boy who appeared in that viral video? Shouldn't the audition process remain merit-based? At Wyndham, merit-based always meant inherited. Malik could feel the change before anyone said a word. His seat in music theory class had been moved to the back row to balance groups. His locker combination had mysteriously been changed overnight. Even the cafeteria cashier had stopped greeting him. But none of that stung like the moment he saw the new program draft on the music bulletin board. Next to his name, Malik Avery, original composition, Rain Without Sky, was a handwritten note in red ink, pending verification. He stared at it for a long time, the words blurring.
Verification.
As if talent needed proof of birthright. That afternoon, the music faculty called a meeting. Malik wasn't invited, but Ava texted him from the hallway. They're saying your piece is plagiarized. From some college kid's composition online. He read it twice before the words sank in. When he arrived at the music room, the door was already closed. Through the narrow window, he could see the panel, the substitute teacher, Miss Calder, Headmaster Dyer, and unexpectedly Mr. Langston. He was back. Malik froze in the hall. He couldn't hear much, but every so often someone's voice pierced through the soundproofing. Uncanny similarity. No documentation of authorship. Emotional. Yes. But skill level inconsistent with training background. It was surreal. They were dissecting his art like evidence at a trial. A few minutes later, the door opened. Langston stepped out first. His eyes caught Malik's for a fraction of a second, apology flickering behind exhaustion. Mr. Avery, Dyer called, beckoning him in. Malik stepped inside. The air was heavy with accusation. Malik, Dyer began, folding his hands. There's been a concern raised about your recital piece. It appears very similar to a composition uploaded online by a student at Juilliard 3 years ago. We're just doing our due diligence. Malik blinked. I've never even been to New York. No one's accusing you, Miss Calder said softly, which of course meant that's exactly what they were doing. We just need to confirm originality. For fairness. Langston shifted uneasily. If I may, he said, voice careful, I've heard Malik play that piece in fragments for months. He's been building it from memory, instinct, improvisation. It's his. Dyer nodded once but didn't relent. We still need proof. Sheet music, notes, recordings, drafts, anything. I don't have any, Malik said quietly. I don't write it down. I hear it. That's convenient. Pierce's voice came from the corner. He was leaning against the wall. Why he was in that meeting, Malik didn't know, but his smirk made the room tilt. Maybe next time you can hear one of my compositions too. Malik's jaw tightened. You want to sit and compare right now? Gentlemen, Dyer interrupted sharply. Let's maintain professionalism. The meeting ended with a warning. If Malik couldn't provide tangible evidence of authorship, his performance slot would be suspended pending investigation. That night, Malik went home and sat at the kitchen table long after his mom fell asleep. His fingers tapped the wood. Same rhythm, Same melody. Rain without sky. The notes came like muscle memory. Effortless. Undeniable. He knew it was his. He felt it was his. But in a world where proof only mattered, when it came stamped with privilege, feeling wasn't enough. He grabbed a pencil and began to write the notes by hand. Line after line of notation, halting, unsure. It wasn't neat. It wasn't formal. But it was real. The next morning, he dropped the pages on Dyer's desk. Here. You wanted proof. Dyer looked them over, unimpressed. Do you have a time-stamped version? Malik stared. It's pencil on paper. Then how do we know you didn't copy? That was when Langston spoke up again, quietly but firmly. Because I was there. I saw it take shape. For a moment Dyer didn't speak. Then he leaned back, calculating. Mr. Langston, you're vouching for this. Yes. You understand the liability if this turns out to be false? Langston's jaw tensed. I understand. The room went silent. Malik left, but his heart was heavy. By lunchtime, news had already spread. The music chat groups buzzed with screenshots of the scandal. Someone had leaked a comparison video. Malik's viral performance side by side with the Juilliard student's piece. The resemblance wasn't exact, but to untrained ears, it was close enough to stir outrage. Comments flooded in. So he did steal it. Figures. Privilege isn't the only kind of cheating. Knew it was too good to be true. For the first time, Malik didn't go to the cafeteria. He sat alone in the old storage room behind the stage, head bowed, hands limp. The music that had once been his sanctuary was now being used to cage him. Later that evening, Nina noticed him quiet at dinner. What happened? He hesitated. They think I stole my song. She froze mid-bite. What? They said it sounds like someone else's. They don't believe it's mine. Her eyes filled. Baby. People like that will always need to believe your light came from someone else. Because if they admit it came from you, they'd have to face how wrong they've been all along. Malik looked up slowly. What am I supposed to do? Keep playing, she whispered. Let your truth make them choke. The next morning, as Malik entered the music room, he noticed a flash drive on the piano, different from before. A sticky note attached said, "Watch this before they erase it." Heart pounding. He plugged it into the classroom laptop. It was footage surveillance again, but this time it wasn't of him. It was of Pierce. Pierce sitting in the recital room, late at night, fumbling through Rain Without Sky. He played poorly, missing half the phrasing, repeating certain sections like he was trying to memorize them. And then at the end, he said quietly to someone off screen, "If I can make it sound close enough, they'll think it was mine first." Malik's hands trembled. He didn't know who had left the drive, but someone had wanted him to know the truth. They weren't just trying to erase him, they were trying to replace him. That afternoon, Dyer summoned him again. "The board's leaning toward removing your slot," he said, tone clinical. "There's too much noise, too many questions." Malik didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just placed the flash drive on the desk and pressed play. As Pierce's voice filled the room, Dyer's expression shifted. Shock, then anger, then fear. Langston, standing in the corner, closed his eyes. Relief flickered there, but also shame, because he knew what came next. Dyer shut the laptop softly. "This can't leave this office," he said, voice low. "If this surfaces, the board, the donors, the press, Wyndham will be destroyed." Malik straightened. "So you'll cover for him?" Dyer met his gaze. "We'll handle it internally." Langston's voice broke through. "You can't bury this." Dyer shot him a look. "Watch me." Malik turned to Langston, heart pounding. "You said you wanted to teach music, not politics. This is your chance." Langston didn't speak. Not then. He looked at Dyer, then at Malik, and for a long, trembling moment, Malik thought he saw the flicker of courage spark behind the man's eyes. But the music teacher knew the truth, and faced a painful choice. The walls of Wyndham Academy were built to protect two things: wealth and silence. And Nina Avery had learned long ago how to move through both, without causing a ripple. 12 years. 12 years of early mornings, scrubbing marble floors before the first bell. 12 years of cleaning offices where her name was never spoken, only her presence quietly expected. 12 years of knowing which teachers left coffee rings on their desks, which boys trashed the locker rooms after lacrosse games, which parents tipped with guilt on holidays, and which didn't even look at her. She'd been invisible long before Malik was ever noticed. But something changed when her son's name started making noise. And noise, in Wyndham, wasn't tolerated. Not from the help. The morning after Malik exposed Pierce's lie with that damning flash drive, the tension in the school's hallways turned icy. There was no announcement, no disciplinary notice, no consequences for Pierce. The video never went public. Instead, Wyndham went quiet. The administration said nothing. Malik's recital slot was reinstated, but buried on the program. Third act, middle of the show tucked between ensemble pieces. The placement said everything. We can't deny him, but we can downplay him. Langston returned to class but with a stiffness in his voice that hadn't been there before. He taught the notes but not the music. Still, Malik kept his head down, until it wasn't his head they came for. It was his mother's. It started with a shift change. Nina arrived at work one morning to find a new roster posted on the janitorial board. Her name had been removed from the music and East Wings, her usual assignment, and replaced with miscellaneous overflow. She asked the supervisor about it. Just rotating zones, he said, eyes glued to his clipboard. Trying to keep things fair. She didn't argue. She never did. But she knew what it meant. She was being pushed to the periphery. The next week, she was reassigned again, this time to the storage and supply closets. Less visibility, less contact, less everything. That same Thursday, while restocking paper towels, she passed by a teacher's lounge where two faculty members were chatting, unaware she was within earshot. Just too close to that situation. I mean, it's her son. Of course she's going to say it's his work. I heard she's been cleaning rooms she's not even assigned to, looking for things. They laughed lightly. One added, she should know better. That kind of ambition doesn't end well around here. Nina didn't stop, didn't flinch, but her hands trembled as she replaced the bleach bottles. The next day was worse. She walked into the administration office to clock out and found her ID badge wasn't scanning. A secretary smiled too widely. Oops, system must have glitched. Let me just reauthorize that. Nina waited 5 minutes while the woman called someone from IT. They're resetting your access manually, she said cheerfully. Should be fixed by tomorrow. Nina left without a word. That night, at home, she said nothing to Malik. But he noticed how she took her shoes off slower, how she didn't sing while washing dishes. Her silence filled the room. You okay? He asked. She forced a smile. Just a long day. He didn't press her. He didn't have to. The next morning, Nina arrived early to clean the teacher's lounge, still technically her zone, and found the door locked. A laminated sign was taped outside. Faculty only, no custodial access without admin approval. She stared at it for a long second, then turned away. But the final blow didn't come until 2 days later. A Saturday morning. Recital rehearsal. Malik had arrived earlier than most students to sneak in extra practice before the final walkthrough. He walked through the side entrance, nodded to the lobby security guard, and made his way toward the music wing. That's when he heard the commotion. A voice tight alarm. A woman. No, I'm telling you, I was assigned to this floor. Footsteps. Radios crackling. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. This area's for faculty and performance staff only. I am staff. Your badge isn't active for this zone. Malik turned the corner and froze. In the center of the lobby, his mother stood surrounded by 2 security officers. One had a hand on his hip. The other blocked her path to the East Wing elevator. Nina's cleaning cart stood to the side, untouched, and at her feet, her ID badge. On the ground, face down. Tears were in her eyes, not from fear, but from humiliation. The kind that rises in your throat when you realize no one ever saw you as more than a risk waiting to be corrected. Malik ran forward. Mom, she looked up, startled. The officers turned. This your son? One asked. Yes, she said quickly, wiping her face. She was trying to access a restricted wing, the other said. Refused to leave until we were called. I didn't refuse, Nina said softly. I just asked why the system said I didn't belong somewhere I've worked for years. The guard ignored her. She needs to be rebadged by HR. Until then, she's not authorized on this floor. Malik's voice cut through. You called security on a janitor? The guard looked him up and down. This is school property. We're following procedure. Nina reached down and picked up her badge. Her hands shook as she clipped it back onto her uniform. I'm going home, she whispered to Malik. I'll come with you. No, she said firmly. You go rehearse. Mom. She looked at him, eyes glossy but strong. I've survived worse, she said. I'll survive this too. Malik watched her walk out, shoulders square, head high, but he felt something in him bend. That evening, Nina sat in their small kitchen, quietly folding her uniform. Malik stood in the doorway. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "Because I knew this day was coming. I just didn't want it to come because of you." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." She looked up. "You didn't drag me. I've been in it. Since day one. Just quieter." She reached out and took his hand. "But I want you to be loud." Malik didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how easily Wyndham had turned on them. How quickly respect vanished the second you stopped being invisible. The next morning, a rumor started. A parent volunteer had overheard a closed-door meeting where Nina Avery's employment status was under review. The school said nothing officially, but signs pointed to one truth. She was being pushed out quietly, without paperwork, without scandal, just phased out until she quit on her own. And Malik knew why. Because her son had become too visible, too undeniable, too black and brilliant to be controlled. But what Wyndham didn't know was that Malik wasn't playing defense anymore. They had fired the first note. And now, he was ready to answer with music no one could silence. Malik walked into the school lobby to find his mother in tears, her ID badge on the floor. It began with a whisper, not a headline. A new video clip, only 19 seconds long, leaked late Sunday night. No watermark, no tags, just raw pixelated footage of a boy playing a piano in a room that seemed too small to hold the sound he was producing. The camera shook slightly, as if the person filming had forgotten to breathe. Malik Avery's back was to the lens. The lighting was poor, but the music was impossible to ignore. Even in those few seconds, you could hear the story woven through the chords. A tremble of resistance, a question pressed into keys, a rising fury that softened into something vulnerable, then climbed again like it had something to prove and everything to lose. Whoever posted the clip didn't include a caption, but the comments came fast. "Who is this? Why haven't we seen him before? This isn't just talent. This is truth." By dawn, the video had reached over 20,000 views. By lunchtime, it crossed 100. Malik didn't even know it existed until Ava nudged him in the hallway between classes. "You've seen the video, right?" "What video?" She blinked. "You're joking." She pulled out her phone, opened Instagram, and played it for him. It took Malik less than 3 seconds to recognize the piece. His own composition, Rain Without Sky, recorded during one of his solo sessions in the recital room weeks ago. He stared at the screen, stunned. "Who posted this?" "No one knows," she said. "It's not from the old flash drive either. It's a new angle. Maybe a student or staff." Malik's stomach flipped. He looked around. The halls weren't filled with whispers this time. They were filled with avoidance. Students stared at their phones. Teachers peeked up and quickly looked away. It wasn't like the last video. That one had felt like curiosity. This felt like exposure. Something about this clip made people uncomfortable. Not because it was bad, because it was undeniably good. And it came from the one place Wyndham didn't want brilliance to rise from. By third period, Headmaster Dyer was already calling students out of class, interrogating them quietly, behind closed doors. "Who filmed this? Where was it taken? Why didn't anyone come forward sooner?" No one answered. Or maybe, no one wanted to. By lunchtime, Malik's recital slot had not been revoked, but his name had been removed from the email programs being sent to parents and donors. The physical posters still had him listed, but online, he was invisible again. The next email that hit Dyer's inbox changed everything. It was from Elise Marlowe, internationally renowned concert pianist. A name Wyndham did recognize. The subject line, "Who is this student?" Attached a link to the viral video. Her message was short. "I've seen hundreds of prodigies in my life. This one feels different. He's not just mimicking. He's bleeding through the keys. I want to speak with him. Set up a meeting. I'll come to Wyndham personally." Dyer stared at the message, jaw tight. Not because he was flattered, but because Elise Marlowe was not the type of woman to take no for an answer. She sat on the board of multiple national youth music initiatives. Her influence was feared in elite circles, and if she saw something in Malik, the pressure shifted. The next day, posters with Malik's name were quietly reprinted and reposted. His slot in the recital program was not only reinstated, but moved up, second to last. The prime spot. They didn't speak to him directly, but he noticed when the music wing office door was suddenly unlocked again. He noticed when Langston handed him back a printed version of his composition, now neatly notated, with a soft just in case anyone else tries to take credit. But the shift wasn't universal, at least not among the student. In the cafeteria, Miles cornered Malik near the back trash cans. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Malik said cautiously. "Do you even want to be here?" Malik frowned. "What's that supposed to mean? You're blowing everything up. Faculty, parents. This whole place is walking on eggshells now. Some of us need Wyndham to get out. We can't afford to make enemies." Malik looked him in the eye. "You think I asked to be in this position?" Miles hesitated. "I think you should know when to play quiet." Malik didn't respond. Because what could he say? He had played quiet for years, and when he finally spoke in music, not words, they tried to bury the sound. That night, Malik sat with his mother on the worn living room couch, scrolling through reposts of the video. It had now passed 200,000 views. Anonymous art pages were sharing it. Even a few blue-checked accounts had picked it up. Nina held his hand. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "I'm tired," he said. "Of what?" "Of feeling like truth only matters if someone powerful decides it does." She squeezed his fingers. "Well," she whispered, "someone powerful just decided it does." The next morning, the school hosted a mandatory community integrity assembly. Dyer stood at the podium, face unreadable. "There's been a lot of attention lately on one of our students. It's a unique situation, and we want to ensure the Wyndham values are upheld in both excellence and humility." The speech danced around Malik's name, never saying it outright, but the message was clear. Don't get too loud. Don't get too proud. When it ended, Elise Marlowe was waiting in the lobby. She wasn't flashy, gray curls pinned back, tailored coat, violinist hands. She asked to speak with Malik, in the recital room. He stepped inside, nerves jumping. She didn't waste time. "That was your piece?
Yes.
You wrote it?
Yes.
No formal training?"
No.
She smiled, gently, but with steel beneath. "You're dangerous," she said. He blinked. "What?" "To places like this," she continued. "You remind them how fragile their ladders are, how thin their definitions of excellence." He didn't know what to say. She leaned forward. "I'm starting a youth fellowship in the fall. Private instruction, international travel, performance circuits. I want you in the founding class. We'll cover everything." Malik's breath caught. "I have school." She nodded. "We can make arrangements. The question is, do you want to keep playing in rooms that resent your sound, or rooms that were built to hold it?" He looked around, at the wood-paneled walls, the velvet chairs, the piano they tried to keep him from, and he asked himself a question he never had before. What does it mean to play free? Before he could answer, the recital room door opened. Headmaster Dyer stood there, stiff. "Elise," he said with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "May I have a word?" She turned to Malik. "Think about it," she whispered. "And know this, what they tolerate is not what you deserve." Malik nodded, pulse racing. As Elise followed Dyer out into the hallway, she stopped just short of the door, then turned back. "By the way," she added, "who filmed that video?" Malik shook his head. "I don't know." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, whoever did just cracked open the gate for you." A famous pianist messaged the school director after watching the clip, and demanded a meeting. In the days leading up to the Winter Honors recital, Wyndham Academy's music wing was suffused with both excitement and tension. Every hallway, practice room, and piano bench became a battleground of silent calculation. Who would get praise, who would be honored, and who would be quietly erased? Malik watched the flurry of activity with a guarded heart. He knew his name was secured on the program now, thanks to Elise Marlowe's pressure, but having your name printed meant little when the system itself was rigged. He sensed that the real contest would be what happened behind that stage, where judges gave scores nobody saw, rubrics nobody challenged, and decisions made in closed rooms nobody questioned. On the morning of the recital, the music faculty gathered in the director's office. Ms. Calder, Dyer the substitute teacher, and a few trustees who rarely set foot in the building. Malik didn't see them, of course, but he felt the tension shift. Doors closed early, whispers muffled in corners, extra security by the stage. He arrived early, warming up in a spare practice room. The keys felt cold under his fingers, but each note grew firmer. He played Rain Without Sky again, then softened, then let himself drift into a version of Chopin's Nocturne, just to feel the control return. Outside, Eva and Miles lingered by the corridor, watching him through the window. Eva offered him a small nod. Miles muttered something, not quite support but not hostility. By late afternoon, the auditorium was nearly filled. Parents, donors, trustees, local press. The stage lights glowed before the curtain rose, giving the piano an almost improbable aura. Malik sat in the wings, heart thundering, rehearsing nothing and everything. The judges took their seats. 3 faces, stern, composed, but already shaded. One of them, Dr. Whitman, was a longtime Wyndham board member, and formerly an adjudicator for state-level competitions. Another was a music publisher. The third was a visiting judge from a conservatory in New York, whose reputation Malik barely knew but whose presence felt heavy. When Malik's turn arrived, he walked onto the stage. Immediately, the audience shifted. Distant gasps, slight leaning forward. He bowed, sat at the Steinway, eyes scanning the lid, bench. He took a breath and began. The opening notes trembled slightly, but he let them be. He let the vulnerability speak before strength followed. Then he unfolded. The melody grew, textures layered, voice rising in dynamics, then softening, then sweeping upward toward a climax only he had lived. Throughout, he let silence speak, pauses, withheld notes, phrases trailing into memory. When he finished, the hush was absolute, longer than applause should take in a recital hall. Then a ripple, then a swell. The roars came in broken waves. He rose, accepted bows, left the stage, feeling like a vessel barely containing the storm he had released. Backstage, he saw Miss Calder's eyes glisten, and heard Dyer mutter something under his breath. Langston was behind a curtain, pacing. Malik's chest pounded so loud he thought someone in the front row would hear it. The judges conferred behind closed doors for what felt like hours. Malik and the other performers waited in the green room, nerves stretching. Several students who'd been friendly earlier now avoided his gaze, as though proximity might brand them as traitors. Finally, a stagehand called names one by one. First ensemble groups, then soloists. Malik's name came last. Delayed in deference, or delay in doubt, the curtain rose. The judges stood. Dyer gave a brief speech. Then the winner's name. It was Pierce Chandler. Malik's heart wrenched. Applause thundered. Pierce, drenched in spotlight, took more than one bow. Malik stood stiff, nodding, masking a storm of disbelief, indignation, heartbreak. After the ceremony, a reception in the foyer. Cheery light, soft music, people smiling for photos. Dyer fluttered around, offering compliments to parents, donors, trustees. Malik drifted near the refreshment table. Eva came up. She placed a hand on his arm. "You were unbelievable," she said quietly. "They'll know." He nodded, voice tight. "They already do." Miles approached, holding 2 water cups. He offered one. Malik took it. "Don't let them steal your story," Miles said quietly, more earnest now than before. Before Malik could respond, Miss Calder came to him. She handed him an envelope. "This arrived earlier," she said. Inside, the judges' feedback sheets. Comments, scores, rubrics. But half the pages were crossed out or blank. Where there should have been clear metrics, there were euphemisms. Lacks lineage, not compelling in context, style inconsistent with tradition. Some had remarks in margins, needs more polish, show pedigree, consider background. Malik recognized Dr. Whitman's handwriting, the visiting judge's typed font. The third judge's notes were vague, but heavily redacted. The scores given to Pierce were crystalline. High marks, strong phrases, adjectives like refined, poised, interpretive. His own scores were clipped. No aesthetic praise, no reference to voice, just technical potential, emotive promise, needs mentorship, no top marks, just reserved language. The shock boiled inside him. The system wasn't hiding its agenda. They were wearing it openly behind black ink and crossed out lines. They didn't believe he belonged in the same rubric. He looked up. Miss Calder's face was grave. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, clenching the sheets in his fist so hard his fingers whitened. The night ended, and students left. Malik lingered in the foyer, the judges drifting away, staff dispersing. He watched Dyer with his donor circles, laughing, glass in hand. It felt like a festival after a war. That night, back at home, Malik lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He turned the judge's forms over and over in his head. Lineage, tradition, polish, words masking exclusion, words that said, he's not one of us. He thought of the flash drive that exposed Pierce, of the Elaine Marlowe invitation, of his mother's battles, of the video that changed everything. He thought, this is bigger than a recital. In the following days, whispers grew. A local music blog published a leaked version of the feedback forms. Someone, anonymous, had scanned them and shared them with the public. The words lineage, tradition, background became lightning rods. Parents called the school. Local news ran stories about privilege in music education. Wyndham's board of trustees met behind closed doors. The recital's sponsor emailed donors giving vague assurances. In the music wing, tension sharpened. Pierce avoided Malik's eye. Langston moved between rooms, teaching but silent. Miss Calder avoided the bulletin board. Dyer's face was pinched. One morning, Malik walked by the director's office and glimpsed Dyer on the phone. His tone was low, curt. Then Dyer's eyes darted toward the door. Someone was waiting outside. Moments later, the front office printed a notice. The recital feedback forms have been compromised. We are investigating unauthorized access. Results may be revised and reissued. Students stared at each other. Teachers shuffled papers. Parents texted. But the damage had been done. The truth was out, and Wyndham couldn't pretend anymore. But someone hacked the judge's feedback forms and leaked the racism. The fallout from the leaked feedback forms came like a slow-building storm. First disbelief, then silence, and finally controlled chaos masked by protocol. Wyndham Academy didn't issue an apology. Instead, they issued a memo. It read, recent breaches of evaluation confidentiality have compromised the integrity of our judging process. We are re-evaluating select recital scores. In the meantime, we appreciate your discretion and continued trust in our institution's commitment to fairness. No mention of racism. No mention of Malik. But everybody knew. The damage was already rippling outward. Local news outlets picked up the blog leak. The term musical redlining began trending in educational circles. Elise Marlowe's name was mentioned in every article, her reputation lending weight to the scandal. She refused comment publicly. Privately, she told Malik, "You won without their permission. That's what scares them." And it showed. In the days leading up to the second recital, a scheduled showcase for student compositions, Malik noticed the shift. His name, now unavoidable, was on every program, but the atmosphere had changed. Students weren't whispering anymore. They were administrators were visible, walking the halls. A security guard was stationed near the music wing. Wyndham was on high alert, not for safety, but for scrutiny. The night of the showcase, Malik stood backstage, waiting to perform. He had rehearsed his piece a dozen times over, but something in his gut told him the performance wouldn't go as planned. Langston approached him 5 minutes before curtain. He looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "There's been a change," he said. Malik frowned. "What kind of change?" Langston hesitated. "Tech said there's an issue with the mic balance. You'll still play, but the amplification will be limited." Malik narrowed his eyes. "Limited?" Langston lowered his voice. "No overhead mic. No direct feed." Malik exhaled. "So I'm playing muted." Langston looked away. "They're calling it a technical glitch, but I wanted you to know before you walked out there." Malik nodded. "Thanks." He turned toward the stage entrance. Heart heavy but strangely clear. They had taken everything else. This time, they wanted the sound too, so he made a decision. When his name was called, Malik walked out slowly. The lights were already low, not the usual soft gold, but a cool white that dimmed the stage and cast shadows across the piano. He sat down. No applause yet, just silent. He didn't adjust the bench, didn't check the pedal, didn't crack his knuckles. He simply placed his hands on the keys and closed his eyes. He began to play, but this time, not softly. He pounded the opening chords, forceful, defiant, a storm in motion. The first bars weren't just notes, they were demands. Then came the melody, haunting, urgent, unapologetic. With every measure, he pushed harder. There was no mic, but he didn't need one. His fingers slammed down, then lifted to whisper. Then struck again, like waves crashing and pulling back, like breath held, then released. Somewhere deep in the hall, a phone slipped from someone's hand. A gasp, then nothing. The recital room, built for polite interpretation, was suddenly overwhelmed. Malik's playing wasn't designed to fit within its walls. It challenged them, chords bent in places, then stretched into near silence. His eyes remained closed. Every key pressed from memory, from pain, from rhythm born in rooms that never had Steinways. He didn't perform the composition the judges had graded. He played the version they'd never deserved to hear. At one point, the lights flickered. Not fully out, but low enough that only Malik's silhouette remained visible. A boy alone, inside sound, and then just as quickly they came back. But he didn't stop. He played until the final phrase curled into silence. Then, he sat still, eyes still shut, hands on the keys, breathing uneven. The room didn't move. For a second, maybe longer, no one clapped. It was too raw, too exposed. Then a sound, not a burst, not a roar, just one person, standing, clapping slowly, deliberately. Malik opened his eyes. It was Elise Marlowe, front row, dressed in black, expression unreadable, still clapping. Then a second person joined, then a third, then a wave. The entire auditorium rose, hands meeting in thunder. But not everyone clapped. In the corner, Dyer sat stiff, lips pressed into a grim line. Langston looked down at his hands. Miss Calder wiped something from her eye. Malik stood, slowly. He bowed once, and walked off stage. Backstage he felt the air shift. Students stared at him differently now. Not just as competition, but as something else. Something undeniable. He didn't speak, didn't need to, but Langston approached him after the final curtain call, holding something in his hand. It was a flash drive, not labeled, just blank. I found this in the staff computer after the last recital, he said. I wasn't supposed to see it. Malik took it, confused. What is it? Langston looked around, then leaned closer. It's a full recording of your performance, with the mic. Full volume. From the soundboard. Malik blinked. I thought the mic was off. Langston's voice dropped. It wasn't. They just said it was. The real audio never streamed live, but it was saved. Malik's stomach turned. So they had it? Langston nodded, and they planned to bury it. Malik gripped the flash drive tightly. You should decide what happens to it, Langston said. Before they do, Malik looked up at him. Then, out at the hallway beyond the stage, where the crowd was waiting, where his mother stood, just outside the double doors, hands folded over her chest, trying not to cry. This wasn't just about the music anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. And now, he had proof, not just of his talent, but of their fear. The crowd went quiet. Then someone stood and started clapping. The performance that night had been everything Malik had dreamed of, and everything Wyndham feared. Within 24 hours, the full recording leaked. Someone, maybe Langston, maybe someone else, uploaded the flash drive's contents online, under a simple title, They Tried to Silence Him. The video was shot from the soundboard's feed, crystal clear, capturing every note, every breath, every tremor of emotion. By sunrise, it had over 1.2 million views. Malik didn't know it yet. He was at home, asleep on the couch, the faint hum of the refrigerator underscoring the quiet peace in the Avery apartment. It was the first morning in months that felt weightless. Then Nina's phone started ringing. Once. Twice. By the fifth call she picked up, bleary-eyed. Hello? Nina, turn on the news, said her friend Lorraine, another custodian at Wyndham. Your boy's on it. Nina sat up straight. What? Lorraine's voice shook with equal parts excitement and worry. He's gone viral again. Bigger than before. Nina fumbled for the remote, turned on the small TV by the window and froze. There it was. Her son's face. Malik at the piano. Eyes closed. Lips pressed tight. His fingers a blur of brilliance. The caption below his image. Wyndham student defies racism, with viral performance. The news anchor spoke like she was narrating a movie trailer. After allegations of bias within Wyndham Academy's elite music program, one student's haunting performance has captured global attention. Nina's hands trembled. She looked toward Malik, still asleep. For one fleeting second, she allowed herself to smile. But joy never stayed long in their world. By mid-afternoon, the narrative shifted. The internet had done what it always did: loved, shared, then dissected. At first came the admiration. Thousands of comments poured in. Musicians praised his technique. Listeners shared stories of how his playing made them cry. Hashtags trended. Let Malik play. Rain without sky. Wyndham. Then came the backlash. Affirmative action at work. Let's see his transcripts. Bet his mom pulled strings. Talent doesn't excuse trespassing. Some comments weren't even subtle. Figures. Another sympathy prodigy. Typical. By evening, reporters camped outside Wyndham's front gates. Photographers snapped pictures of students coming and going, shouting questions. Wyndham, desperate to contain the chaos, released a statement. Wyndham Academy supports artistic expression and inclusion. We are cooperating with ongoing inquiries related to this matter. It said nothing and everything at once. The next day, Malik's phone started buzzing non-stop. Messages from strangers flooded his inbox, some congratulating, others condemning. His classmates grew divided, some proud, most distant. In the cafeteria, Malik walked to his usual corner table and noticed something new on his tray. A napkin. Scribbled on it, "You made us all look bad." He didn't flinch. He just folded it, tucked it into his pocket, and ate in silence. At home, things grew heavier. Nina started receiving calls from reporters pretending to be family friends. The school refused to answer her emails about whether her job was secure. And late one night, as Malik scrolled through his phone, a headline made his chest tighten. Who is Malik Avery? Digging into the Wyndham prodigy's past. The article started like a biography, but halfway through it turned invasive. It listed their neighborhood, the building complex, even referenced Nina's employment history. It wasn't journalism, it was exposure. By the next morning, more outlets had copied it. Blogs ran with phrases like janitor's son, employee's advantage, and school scandal. But one headline stung the most.
Wyndham's golden boy or manipulated narrative.
It used the word boy on purpose. He could feel it. The subtle diminishment. The coded dismissal. The way success turned suspicious once it came from someone like him. Elise Marlowe called that afternoon. "They're scared of what you represent," she said bluntly. "They can't erase the performance, so they're trying to erase the person." Malik's throat felt dry. "It's not just me anymore. They're going after my mom." "I know," Elise said quietly. "That's how institutions fight back. Not with fists, with silence and paperwork." A pause. "Don't react publicly yet," she added. "Let them drown in their own noise. The truth always floats." But truth, Malik was learning, didn't float easily when people kept weighing it down. By the end of the week, Wyndham was under siege from two sides. Activist groups demanding accountability, and donors threatening to pull funding. And Malik? He became a lightning rod. Every article that praised him brought another wave of cruelty. Every supporter drew out a detractor. It wasn't fame. It was dissection. The viral clip had crossed continents, picked up by international outlets, shared by celebrities, even dissected by talk shows. But every re-upload came with the same caption: "The janitor's son who played like a god." It wasn't meant as an insult. But to Malik, it felt like a chain. They didn't see him as a musician. They saw him as a miracle that wasn't supposed to exist. And then came the twist. Friday morning. Rain pounding against the windows. Malik sat beside his mom at the kitchen table, watching another segment about Wyndham on TV. A panel discussion. Two white commentators, one black journalist. They spoke about him like he wasn't real. "He's impressive," one said, "but it's important we verify his background. There have been fabricated prodigy stories before." The black journalist frowned. "Why does a kid need to prove genius just because he's not from money?" The host chuckled awkwardly. "No one's saying that, but they were." Mid-segment, a banner flashed at the bottom of the screen. "Exclusive documents reveal every family's hidden past." Nina froze. Her hand stopped mid-air. Coffee cup trembling. Malik looked up at her. "What is that?" She didn't answer. The broadcast cut to an investigative reporter standing outside a courthouse. "Records obtained by our team show that in 2009, a woman named Nina Avery, then 28, was briefly arrested during a labor protest outside a cleaning contractor's office. The charges were later dropped, but the arrest remains public record." Malik's chest tightened. "They're going after you now," he whispered. Nina's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away before they fell. "I knew they'd dig. They always do." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it didn't matter," she said softly. "It was nothing. We were fighting for pay we'd already earned. They booked a bunch of us to make a point." Malik stood pacing. "They're twisting it. They're making it sound like—" "I know." He turned off the TV, his reflection glaring back from the blank screen. "This isn't about music anymore," he said. "They want to humiliate us." Nina exhaled slowly. That's what happens when people who never had power start getting seen. The system pulls receipts. The phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Nina silenced it. Malik sat beside her. "They can try to ruin us," he said quietly, "but I'm not done." She smiled faintly. "That's my son." Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, something hardened in Malik, a resolve beyond defiance. He opened his laptop, navigated to his email, and typed one message. To Elise Marlowe. Subject: "I'm ready. If they want to know where I come from, I'll show them where I'm going." He hit send. And somewhere, across town, Elise Marlowe opened that message, smiled grimly, and began making calls of her own. Because if Wyndham wanted to expose the Maid's son, the world was about to see just how far that son could rise. Then someone found an old arrest record with his mother's name on it. Fame was supposed to be freedom. But for Malik Avery, it felt like surveillance with applause. After the story of his mother's arrest hit the airwaves, his name exploded beyond the borders of Wyndham, beyond the local stations, beyond control. Every headline twisted into something new. Prodigy with a past. From janitor's son to viral sensation. The boy who pay through scandal. But the more people wrote about him, the less he recognized himself in the stories. He wasn't the angry activist they painted him as, or the perfect symbol of hope they tried to brand him into. He was just a boy who wanted to play piano, and for the first time he couldn't touch a key without thinking about who was watching. Every interview request came with a motive. Every news anchor smiled too brightly. They wanted trauma dressed as inspiration. They wanted him to cry on cue. He stopped responding. At school it got worse. Wyndham's administration tried to manage the situation. They hired a PR firm, drafted new statements, and launched a diversity in the arts campaign. Posters of smiling black and brown students popped up overnight, all stock photos. None of them Malik. When he walked through the halls, people didn't whisper anymore. They stared openly. He wasn't invisible now. He was spectacle. Even the teachers avoided saying his name in roll call, as if invoking it might summon controversy. Langston was the only one who tried to reach him. One afternoon he found Malik sitting in the empty recital room, eyes closed, hands resting on the keys but not playing. Langston spoke softly. "You haven't practiced this week." Malik didn't open his eyes. "Practiced for who?" "For yourself." Malik laughed, low and bitter. "That's the problem, isn't it? It's not for me anymore. It's for them, for whoever's filming, for whoever's editing the story to make it more palatable." Langston sat beside him on the bench. "You can't control what people see, only what you give." Malik's voice cracked. "What if I don't want to give anything anymore?" Langston looked at him with quiet understanding. "Then stop. Let the world starve a little. They don't deserve you full." It was the first real kindness Malik had heard in weeks. That night, he went home and turned off his phone for the first time since everything started. The silence was heavy, but honest. He sat at the kitchen table while Nina folded laundry, the TV muted. She hummed softly, something church-like, something that smelled like peace. He finally spoke. "Do you ever wish I wasn't good at this?" She looked up. "At piano? At this? The thing that's got everyone watching?" Nina smiled faintly. "Baby, I don't wish you were less. I just wish the world was better at handling more." He nodded. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," she said gently. "But maybe you were chosen for it." He didn't believe in that kind of destiny, but he let her believe for both of them. 2 days later, Elise Marlowe called again. He didn't pick up the first time, or the second, but on the third Nina answered. "Elise," she said warmly, though there was an undertone of caution. "You've been kind to us. What's this about?" "I need to speak to Malik," Elise said. "There's something he needs to hear from me directly." When Malik got on the line, she didn't waste time. "Juilliard reached out," she said. The world stopped for a second. "I saw your video," Elise continued. "The board watched it twice. The president himself called me. They're offering you an early admission under their special talent exemption. Full ride." Malik went silent. Nina covered her mouth. "Full ride?" "Yes," Elise said. "Everything. Tuition, housing, mentorship. It's real." Malik's breath caught. "What's the catch?" Elise hesitated, and that pause told him everything. "What is it?" he asked. "They're calling it a conditional acceptance," she said carefully. You'd need to complete your senior year at Wyndham. Under their supervision. Publicly. Malik frowned. Meaning, they want to turn it into a partnership. Juilliard and Wyndham, showcasing their commitment to diversity and emerging talent. He exhaled slowly. So, I'd be their poster boy. Elise's voice softened. That's the condition. Malik's chest tightened. They don't want me. They want the headline. Maybe, Elise said. But headlines open doors, and sometimes you have to walk through one to build another. He didn't answer. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the hum of the city beyond the window. Somewhere out there, people were still watching that video, still debating his worth like it was public property. He thought about what Juilliard represented: freedom, recognition, validation, but also visibility. The same spotlight that had burned him once before. By morning, he had made up his mind. He walked into Wyndham's main office, wearing his oldest hoodie, the one that still smelled like cleaning supplies from when he used to wait for his mom to finish her shift. Miss Calder looked up from her desk. Malik, what are you doing here so early? He handed her a folded letter. Can you give this to Headmaster Dyer? He said. She nodded. Curious. What is it? My answer. When Dyer opened the letter later that morning, he found one sentence written neatly in Malik's hand. I'll take the offer, but not on your terms. Attached was a USB drive, labeled Untold. Inside was a new recording, one Malik had made the night before. No cameras, no audience, just him and the piano in the dark. It wasn't a performance. It was a confession. Each note was heavy, haunted, alive. You could hear the ache, the anger, the small moments of peace. He sent a copy to Elise too, with a message. They can showcase my name, but they won't script my sound. By evening, the internet had a new video to devour. The caption this time wasn't written by Malik. It was posted by Elise herself. He didn't want fame. He wanted to be heard. So listen. The video wasn't glossy or polished. Just raw footage. Malik's hands in half-light, trembling, powerful. The comments section filled instantly. Not with pity, not with praise, but with something else. Silence. People didn't know how to respond. Because for once, they couldn't turn his art into a headline. It was too honest. Too unedited. That night, Malik turned off every notification. He sat in the same kitchen where his mom had once hummed through exhaustion and whispered, "Keep going." He finally smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just a small, tired smile that felt real. He was tired of performing for approval. He wanted to play for truth, and he would no matter who tried to own his story next. The next morning, an email arrived from Juilliard. Subject: Rye, offer acceptance. We respect your conditions. Let's talk next steps. But there's one more thing you should know. Someone at Wyndham sent us additional files about you. We think you should see them. Malik stared at the screen. Then his phone buzzed with another message. This one from Elise. Don't open anything until I get there. Something's not right. He looked out the window, a flicker of dread rising beneath his calm. He'd finally found his voice. Now someone else was trying to rewrite it again. Then came an offer from Juilliard, with a shocking condition. The night of the final performance glowed with a promise. Malik had never dared breathe aloud. The venue was no longer Wyndham's recital hall, or a school auditorium. It was the city's grand concert hall, ornate arches and velvet curtains, gilded balconies, seats that held whispers of greatness, the kind of room built for memory, not for hiding mistakes. By 7:30 p.m., guests trickled in. Wyndham's trustees, donors, local media, music aficionados, and even critics flown in for the evening. Among them sat former skeptics, parents who once crossed their arms when his name was mentioned. The spotlight was heavier now, not just on lights and stage, but on legacy, on expectation, on vindication. Backstage, Malik paced, quiet energy pulsing through him. Langston hovered nearby, looking more solemn than ever. Miss Calder had assigned an administrative assistant to escort him to the stage door. Nina sat in a front row seat, silent and still, nearly invisible in the audience's hush. But Malik could feel her eyes pinned on him through the curtains. Earlier that afternoon, the staff had insisted on a full sound check. Engineers in suits, wires snaking across the floor, technicians crouched at the piano's frame. Malik watched them from the wings, straining to follow every movement. The piano seemed huge under their hands, swallowing its own echoes. When it was finally his time, he walked onto the stage, greeted by soft applause. He sat at the Steinway and took a deep breath. The hall fell entirely silent, as though waiting. He opened the music stand, closed it again. No sheet music. He was going to play Rain Without Sky, the version they'd never accepted, the version that had cracked Wyndham's veneer. He placed his hands on the keys, eyes closed, and began. The opening phrase slipped into the hall like a question. It rose, folded into itself, climbed with force, softened to vulnerability, then swelled to a bold crescendo. He played with a ferocity tempered by nuance, silence, where there should be notes, extension where they expected closure. It was his language. It was his demand. Up in the balcony, a donor's daughter dabbed at tears. In the stalls, longtime critics shifted. The judges, seated in the front rows, sat frozen. The hall itself seemed to lean in. Malik had turned his music into attention. It was no longer ignorable. But then, mid-piece, something changed. A discordant note. Sharp. Jarring. Out of place. He paused. His hand hovered. The audience held its breath. He looked down at the keys. The D sharp he just hit shouldn't have been there. It cut through the phrase, and then the pedal didn't lift cleanly. Held a ghost of resonance. The piano groaned. Malik swallowed. He looked at the lid. Something was off. Langston's heart lurched in the wings. Technicians tensed. The assistant backstage cursed under his breath. But Malik didn't flinch. He didn't quit. He leaned into the fault, allowed the unwanted resonance to bleed into the music. He adapted, shifted the arrangement midstream, bending the melody to swallow the glitch. The room had expected perfection, but he gave them truth. When the last chord faded, the hall was too still. You could hear a pin drop. Then applause erupted. It wasn't polite. It wasn't the same applause he knew from school recitals. It was urgent, electric, unstoppable. Every part of the hall rose on its feet. Malik stood in shock. He let them clamor. He bowed. He walked off the stage, heart raw, chest hammered. Behind the scenes as he passed backstage hallways, people crowded him. Journalists, supporters, staff. Warm hands patted his back. Miss Calder's eyes were damp. Nina's voice cracked. You did it. As the night wound down, Malik lingered near the piano. He looked at the keys, still humming from his fingers. He wondered who had tried to sabotage him, why they'd risked that evening. He looked at Langston, who met his gaze. Then, across the stage, the piano technician approached with a plate of wires and an open tuning panel. His face was white. You better see this, he said. Malik and Langston followed him. Inside the piano's body, near the action, the hammers, dampers, someone had tampered. A small piece of felt misaligned. A damper spring loosened. A pad shifted. It was subtle, but in a venue this exquisite, every component mattered. It was sabotage, not mechanical failure. Deliberate. Malik's heart pounded. The people he had overcome had tried to interfere even now. He whispered, "They thought they could silence me again." Langston placed a hand on his shoulder. "But you turned it into music anyway." Outside, the audience still roared for an encore. Malik stepped to the stage entrance, looked out into the sea of faces, and realized this was no longer just a performance. This was his reckoning. He placed both hands on the piano lid, closed his eyes, took a breath, and then the curtain behind him shimmered as someone entered the wings. He turned, and the silhouette wasn't someone he expected. In that pause, the hall held its breath, and right before the curtain rose, someone tried to sabotage the piano. The man who stepped into the wings wore a charcoal coat, a silver tie, and a face Malik couldn't place, but somehow felt like a memory trying to return. He was tall, older, with streaks of gray along his temple. His eyes were damp, as if the performance had cracked something open inside him. He clutched the program in one hand, folded and bent at the edges, the words featuring Malik Avery barely visible beneath his trembling thumb. Malik froze, still high on adrenaline and disoriented by the sabotage, unsure whether this was a supporter or reporter or something else. Langston stepped forward, protective, but the man spoke first, his voice low and unsteady. "Your name's Malik Avery." Malik nodded slowly. "Yes." The man swallowed. "I wasn't gonna come tonight. I saw the video by accident, heard the name, and..." He looked away, blinking. "I thought it had to be a coincidence." Malik narrowed his eyes. "Do I know you?" The man stepped closer. No. But I know your mother. Malik stiffened. The air behind the curtain went still. Even Langston didn't move. My name is Daniel Langford. The name struck Malik like a dissonant chord. Langford. Not Langston. Langford. The man looked like he wanted to shrink and explain himself all at once. Years ago, I worked with your mom. Long before Wyndham. Long before you were born. He paused, then said it straight. I was the one who got her arrested during that protest. Malik's blood chilled. What? I was the contractor. She was right about the unpaid wages. About everything. I knew it, but I let the lawyers handle it. I signed the order to have the protest broken up. I thought it was just business. Malik's fists clenched. And now you're here to apologize? No, Daniel said quietly. I'm here to listen. And because I wanted to tell you, you were the one who broke me. Malik blinked. I watched your video. The one in the dark. No edits. No spotlight. Just you and the music. Daniel's voice shook. I cried. I haven't cried in 15 years. I've built buildings, fired people, made speeches, but I never created anything that meant something. You did, and I need to live with the fact that I helped bury your mother's light. And somehow her son still found a way to shine. Malik didn't speak. He couldn't. Daniel fumbled in his coat and pulled out a card. He started a foundation, after that article about the recital, quietly. I want to use my money for something that isn't about erasing people. If you want, it's yours to direct. Scholarships, studios, whatever. But no pressure. Just, thank you for tonight. He handed Malik the card and turned to leave, but Nina stepped into the wings. She had seen everything. Heard enough. Her voice was calm. Daniel Langford. He turned, eyes wide. Nina, he said, shame painting his features. I didn't know you were here. I always was, she replied softly. You just never looked. Malik watched them both, the decades between them collapsing in silence. I'm proud of you, Nina said to her son. No matter who watches, no matter what they say, you didn't ask to carry this burden, but you carried it anyway. Malik felt something break loose inside. Grief, relief, gratitude, maybe all at once. The applause was still going. They had been clapping for over 3 minutes. People stood. People sobbed. Critics known for their cold objectivity held tissues to their faces. One child in the audience whispered to his mother, "Can I play like him one day?" The mother bent down and replied, "Only if you play like yourself." Backstage, Malik could feel it. The shift. For years he had been seen through the lens of dismissal. A janitor's kid, a scholarship student, lucky to be here. He was the footnote, the exception, the glitch in the program. But now, for once, no one could look away. Langston approached him slowly. They say it's just music, he said. But tonight? That was a revolution. Malik didn't speak. His voice would have cracked. Outside, someone from the conservatory asked Nina for a quote. She declined. Let the music speak, she said. Malik walked out to the lobby afterward. People swarmed, handshakes. Congratulations. Flashes of phones. But one woman stopped him quietly, gently. She wore a modest blazer and no name badge. My daughter's never liked classical music, she said. But after watching you tonight, she asked me if she could start lessons. Malik smiled, the kind that felt like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Another man approached. I'm sorry, he said simply, for ever doubting your place. Malik didn't accept the apology, but he didn't reject it either. He just moved on. In a corner of the lobby, he noticed Pierce Chandler, alone. No fans, no press, just him. Watch. Pierce didn't approach. He just nodded once. A quiet acknowledgement, not peace, but maybe surrender. And then Malik walked outside. The air was cold, crisp, honest. Nina walked beside him. You were never just a janitor's kid, she said. I know, he said quietly. But now, so do they. Behind them, the ovation was still echoing inside. It wasn't about being the best. It was about being undeniable. The doors of the hall shut behind him, but his story was no longer confined to stages. Then Langston emerged from the building, eyes wide. Malik, he called out, breathless. Malik turned. Langston held up his phone. You need to see this. He handed it over. The screen showed a message. Anonymous sender. A file attachment. No subject. Langston frowned. It's footage. From the sound check. Before you played tonight, Malik opened the file. Inside a video of someone tampering with the piano. In the corner, partially hidden, but visible enough, Malik's heart sank. The figure was wearing a Wyndham faculty badge, and the initials on the badge were D.D. Dyer, Headmaster Dyer. A man stepped out of the audience with tears in his eyes, and a last name Malik never expected. The morning after the concert, Wyndham Academy was unrecognizable. It felt as though the school had woken up in a new skin. Banners replaced neutral portraits, praising authentic brilliance, artistic equity, new beginnings. The grand foyer, once cold marble, silent curves, muted prestige buzzed with media crews and local reporters. The name Malik Avery echoed in every corridor, every announcement. Malik walked through that day with a strange calm. The night's triumph was still vibrating in his bones, but he knew the danger. Once you're no longer ignorable, everything becomes negotiable. He carried the flash drive Langston gave him in his pocket, along with Daniel Langford's foundation card, and a letter from Juilliard accepting his conditional status. He had 3 possible futures in his grasp: Wyndham's redemption, an external fellowship, or something he would define himself. He found Miss Calder in the office, reading a stack of printouts. Her face, often rehearsed for decorum, now carried fatigue, and what might have been respect. She looked up. "Malik," she said softly. "Good morning," he replied. "There's something you should see," she said, gesturing to the school's internal message board. Malik leaned forward. A rotating digital banner carried these words: "Wyndham Academy salutes our students, including Malik Avery, whose music reminds us genius has no pedigree." Below it, another line scrolled: "Graduation speaker invitation forthcoming." The invitation was already circulating. Teachers whispered, parents buzzed, students speculated, but Malik hesitated. He'd spent too long being spoken for. He needed to define his own voice. Later that day, Dyer requested a meeting. Malik entered the headmaster's office. A smaller room now cluttered with upward-facing press files and printed op-eds. Dyer stood near the window, hands folded. "Malik," he began, voice steady. "On behalf of Wyndham's board, we would be honored if you'd speak at graduation. We want the world to hear your voice." Dyer's eyes were not apologetic. They were expectant. Malik sat across from him watching the clock tick. "I'll consider it," he said, "but on a condition." Dyer braced. "Name it." Malik's voice dropped, but carried iron. "I will only speak if the entire recital feedback redesign committee is dissolved, and a new panel, with external voices beyond Wyndham, is formed, and no part of my speech can be pre-approved or edited by any school official." Dyer's eyes flickered. "That's significant." "Let me speak freely," Malik said. "Not for you or your donors, but for all the students who were erased before me." He stood and walked out. Dyer remained unmoving behind the desk. The weeks leading to graduation were electric. Wyndham's trustees released a statement. The feedback committee would temporarily disband pending review. Several trustees who once resisted diversity measures now made speeches about institutional humility. Parents gossiped about Wyndham's new direction. Students looked at Malik with both reverence and envy, but mostly respect. Daniel Langford's foundation quietly provided funding to upgrade the music wing, install open-access practice rooms, and establish a yearly Avery Fellowship for underprivileged youth musicians. Malik refused to accept credit publicly. He insisted the foundation operate independently, but the hallways began to buzz about how far the school had come, using his name, but not controlling its meaning. Graduation day dawned, crisp and clear. The courtyard was packed. Proud parents, students in caps and gowns, faculty in robes, and local press lined the perimeter. A large banner draped behind the stage read, "Wyndham 2025, a year of reckoning." Malik sat in the second row. Nina sat beside him, still in her uniform, renewed badge access restored. She held his hand, calm and present. When it was time, Dyer introduced him. But Malik stepped up to the microphone without notes. He looked out at the sea of faces, seniors, underclassmen, teachers, visitors. He didn't start with apologies. He started with silence, an invitation. Then he spoke, in a voice full unfiltered. "They told me I was a janitor's kid. They locked doors. They erased my name. They tried to rewrite my sound. But tonight, I'm not just the note between your systems. I'm the echo you couldn't silence." He spoke of pain, of witnessing his mother's badge on the floor, of being erased from rosters, of judges who judged by lineage, not music, of videos deleted, records altered, rumors spread. He didn't name every person, but he named the mechanisms: silence, exclusion, coded praise, institutional fear. Then he turned to the new music fellows, the scholarship students, the invisible ones. Your room is here now, he said. Let that be enough. Play your truth louder than their doubt. Nina stood. The crowd rose with her. Tears in her eyes. She whispered, "You did it." When he finished, applause thundered. And then, something unexpected. The trustees who once sat stiff-faced now stood, some teary, some ashamed, some hopeful. The board president stepped forward, held a microphone. "Malik Avery," she said, voice shaking, "you've changed Wyndham, and then some. Thank you." Then in the swirl of celebration, Malik looked down at his phone. A message from a blank number. He opened it. "We have evidence of Dyer's tampering. I've shared everything with district attorneys. Be ready." Malik's stomach nodded. He looked toward Dyer, seated behind the platform, his face pale, lips pressed. Security staff hovered. A murmur of confusion swept through the audience. He realized his condition wasn't just symbolic. It had power. He had spoken, unedited, unfiltered. He had harnessed a stage built on legacy and bent it under his sound. But there were still battles left. The world would now hear what Wyndham almost lost. He stepped down from the podium. Nina embraced him. Langston came forward. And in that moment, Malik understood survival wasn't enough. He was redesigning what legacy meant. As the crowd cleared and speeches dispersed, Dyer stood alone in his office, staring at the feedback sheets he once controlled. Outside, trustees convened urgently. The board's legal counsel arrived. Malik left the stage into the warm daylight, shielded by applause yet unshielded by truth. His phone buzzed again. "Message. Let's talk." He looked at it, then deleted it. He turned to walk out into the future. But right before he reached the exit, he paused. Someone called to him. It was Ava Winston. "Congratulations," she said. "You changed something tonight. For all of us." He nodded. "We changed something." And as he stepped past the final threshold, between Wyndham's halls and the world beyond, he carried with him not just the strength to survive, but the power to redefine what genius, voice, and legacy could be. The school asked him to speak at graduation, but he had one condition. They called him just a janitor's kid, but his music told the truth no one wanted to hear. If you've ever been overlooked, silenced, or told you didn't belong, you know what this feels like. Type yes if you believe talent has no color. Subscribe if this story broke your heart and opened your eyes.